My husband's elder brother passed away, leaving behind his wife and their unborn child. In our previous life, she lived and ate with me, even timing her childbirth to coincide with mine. She abused that unborn child every day, yet poured all her love and effort into doting on my husband and my son. It wasn't until that child was wrongfully imprisoned that I finally learned the truth. It turned out she had instructed the nurse to switch the two babies on the day of delivery. I lost my mind. Barged in to confront them, but they simply pushed me down the stairs, silencing me for good, and the three of them lived happily ever after with my inheritance. When I opened my eyes again, filled with overwhelming hatred, I had returned to the day of delivery. A sharp pain shot through my lower body, and I let out a piercing scream. The nurse's voice echoed in my ears. "Push, the baby is coming." I had actually been reborn. Reborn on the very day I was giving birth, in my previous life. My sister-in-law and I were in labor at the same hospital. My husband was running around preparing a delivery bag for my sister-in-law and making carefully planned meals. Meanwhile, I was using things my sister-in-law didn't like and eating her leftovers. I was so angry that I went into premature labor, but my husband hurriedly took my sister-in-law to the delivery room and stayed outside the entire time. I even had to sign my own cesarean section consent form, in the end. I passed out from the pain. When I woke up, both my sister-in-law and I had given birth to sons. After that, my sister-in-law doted on my son Li Huan excessively, giving him whatever he wanted, while she would either beat or scold her own son Li Jian. I felt sorry for the child Li Jian and wanted to help him, but my husband said to me, "Just take good care of Huan." As a younger sister-in-law, "Why are you meddling in your sister-in-law's affairs?" The thought of Li Huan being so utterly spoiled by his sister-in-law and husband made me give up on meddling in other people's children's affairs. I quit my job to tutor my child full-time at home, wholeheartedly raising Li Huan to become the top scorer in the college entrance examination. Meanwhile, my own child, Li Jian, was forced by his sister-in-law to drop out of junior high school and sent to work in a sweatshop factory. At a young age, he suffered from dust poisoning and developed lung cancer. Later, Li Huan killed someone while driving under the influence. My sister-in-law frantically pulled Li Jian, who was lying in the hospital bed, and asked him to take the blame for Li Huan. For the sake of the child, I also knelt before Li Jian, begging him to save my son. In the Li family, I was the only one who held any goodwill toward Li Jian, and I was the one who paid for his surgery. He repaid kindness with gratitude, truly taking the blame for Li Jian. In the end, he took his own life directly in prison. Later, one day when I returned home early from a business trip, I heard Li Huan call my sister-in-law, "Mom." Then Li Huan said, "I hate Shinjitao, when are we going to get rid of her?" I had an emotional breakdown and rushed into the house to ask them what was really going on. The three of them panicked for a moment, but then my sister-in-law said triumphantly, "So what if you know? Your biological son is already dead." Li Huan even pointed at me and loudly accused, "All these years, you made me study more than you, forbade me from being with Ruoro, wouldn't let me eat KFC or drink milk tea outside, and didn't give me any startup funds. Only now do I realize that it's because you're not my biological mother, and you don't love me, you just wanted a respectable son. You took Li Jian to eat KFC and drink milk tea, and even gave him money for cancer treatment. It's clear that the bond between mother and son is truly unbreakable." Li Qi adjusted his glasses and said, "Shinji, I never loved you. I've always loved my sister-in-law, but who made your family rich, allowing me to soar to great heights? Lily has suffered for so many years, and now she and I have finally made it through. Go to hell." The three of them pushed me out of the window. Later, I told the police that I had accidentally fallen out of the window. Then the three of them lived a happy and fulfilling life with my inheritance, too. Recalling the events of my past life, I was overwhelmed with hatred. With a strong push, the child from my past life, who had been delivered by cesarean section, was now born naturally. I couldn't hold on any longer and passed out. When I woke up, my sister-in-law and I had been moved into the same hospital room. At that moment, my sister-in-law was still unconscious, and my husband was looking at her with a worried yet affectionate gaze. I gritted my teeth and called out, "Husband." He turned back impatiently. "What is it?" I shouted directly. "Go get me a damn glass of water. I'm thirsty." "What are you looking at with both eyes? Is that your wife?" "That's your sister-in-law. Are you trying to commit incest?" The nurse in the ward, who was hanging in for Lily, widened her eyes in shock and exclaimed, "Isn't this your wife?" Li Qi's face turned pale and then flushed, looking disheveled and unwilling as he took the water cup and left. Our ward is on the 3rd floor, while the hot water room is on the 1st floor. As soon as the nurse left, I ignored the pain in my lower body and swapped the two children. Fortunately, it was the small clothes that Li Qi had personally chosen. Although he didn't want to give my son anything good, he was even less willing to spend time on my son. So I carefully selected a small outfit for my sister-in-law's son and casually asked the salesperson to wrap up the same style. My heart was pounding, but luckily, Li Chi was still dawdling outside, doing who knows what, and hadn't returned for a long time. After swapping the children, I finally felt at ease. Because I was born prematurely, my sister-in-law had a cesarean section to align with my timing, and she still has a long scar on her stomach, not long after. My sister-in-law slowly woke up from the anesthesia, glanced at the child, and then gave me a subtle, smug look. We really do have fate, giving birth on the same day. I sneered coldly and ignored her, feeling snubbed. My sister-in-law took out her phone and fiddled with it for a moment. In less than a minute, Li Chi returned, and the water cup in his hand had long since disappeared. Sister-in-law, you're awake. What would you like to eat? Li Chi said eagerly. Wan Li glanced over. Sister-in-law, what do you want to eat? I'll have Li Chi go buy it. Looking at Wan Li's smug expression, I asked her, Sister-in-law, is Li Chi my husband or yours? Why do I need you to tell him to buy something for me to eat? Li Chi's face turned cold. Shinji, do you have any idea what you're saying? She's my sister-in-law. My brother is gone. Is it wrong for me to take a little extra care of her? Take care all the way to the bed, Li Chi exclaimed in shock and disbelief. What nonsense are you spouting? His sister-in-law, even more furious and humiliated, retorted, Shinji, can you watch your words? What do you mean by take care all the way to the bed? I'm your sister-in-law. Are you trying to ruin me? Li Chi looked at me with even more disappointment in his eyes. You've always been like this, suspicious and distrustful, when I work overtime with a female colleague. You think I'm cheating. When I go out to eat with friends, you call me over a dozen times in an hour to check on me, and now, just because I'm taking care of my sister-in-law, you suspect something between us. Do you know what's most important between two people? It's trust and space. If you keep this up, I'll divorce you. Li Chi knew I loved him so much that I even cut ties with my family to be with him, so he took a step back to advance. Confident that I wouldn't cause any more trouble with him, I smiled slightly. All right, let's get a divorce. If you apologize to your sister-in-law. Li Chi looked at me with an incredulous gaze. What did you just say? You said you want to divorce me. 3. Wasn't it you who brought up the divorce? I agreed. And we can go handle the divorce now. Li Chi looked for a long time, then smiled and said, Shinji, let me tell you, playing hard to get is useless. Be careful not to overdo it. As long as you apologize to my sister-in-law, I'll forgive you. Wan Li also chimed in hypocritically, Sister-in-law, don't say such angry words, you just gave birth. If you divorce Li Chi, who else would want you? After hearing this, Li Chi became even more convinced that I was playing hard to get. After all, he was most skilled at using this trick himself. At that moment, the door of the ward was kicked open, and a burly man walked in, who said no one wants her, even if no one wants her. It's not like our family can't afford to support a woman and a child, brother, I called out. Li Chi straightened up and asked me, did you call him here? Li Chi was a poor phoenix who flew out of the mountain valley. Because he was good-looking and hardworking, I took a liking to him and insisted on being with him no matter what. My family was wealthy, and Li Chi initially played hard to get, giving me the cold shoulder and saying we were from different worlds. Who in this world could be so unmoved by money? I became even more determined to be with him, so, like a devoted follower, I spent money on Li Chi and used my family's resources to help him. Li Chi always said to me with a cold face and pursed lips, I will pay you back for all of this. He even wrote me an IOU. He treated me this way, and he treated my family the same, neither humble nor arrogant, full of pride, and never speaking politely, at first. My parents thought Li Chi might not be the typical Phoenix man, but after spending more time with him, they realized he had pride but no talent, so they forbade me from being with him. Li Chi wants to break up with me, and I was so obsessed that I even cut ties with my family just to be with him. My family had no choice but to agree, but fortunately, they had a backup plan. The house we live in and the car we use are both registered under my parents' names. Let's go, let's get a divorce, I said. My brother took out a furry hat and put it on my head, then pushed the wheelchair over. Li Chi saw that we were serious and became anxious. Shinji, I said divorce was just a moment of anger. We've been through so much together. Do you really have the heart to divorce me? Hurry up. If we don't leave now, the Civil Affairs Bureau will close. Could it be that you're reluctant to part with my family's money? Li Chi hated nothing more than people saying he was with me for my family's money. Upon hearing this, his expression turned fierce, and he said with resentment, let's divorce, we'll go right now. Whoever backs out is a dog. His company has already achieved some success, with 2 projects currently underway. Once these projects are completed, he stands to earn at least over 200 million. He wants my family's money. Once our son grows up, the assets under my name will still end up being his. The division of assets was swift, in front of my brother. He hypocritically offered to give me shares. I didn't dare accept, because their company is about to face a major crisis. In my previous life, it was only because I leveraged my family's connections that the issue was successfully resolved. In this life, I don't see how his lousy company can keep running without my help. When I got home, I had someone clear out all his and his sister-in-law's belongings, and then hired a professional postpartum caregiver to take care of me. My brother asked me to move back home, but I refused. Li Chi was furious when he found out I had thrown their things out and immediately drove back to take his stuff away. I had someone stop him. Shinji, we're already divorced. What are you doing? I'm telling you, even if you regret it now, it's too late. I sat in my wheelchair and said to him, leave the car, my parents bought it for me. Li Chi threw the car keys to me with a dark expression. Who said I wanted your car? I was just returning it to you. That very afternoon, Li Chi drove a luxury car and took Wenli to buy the house next door to mine, moving in with great satisfaction. I suspect they wanted to keep a close eye on their child. I didn't mind, let them watch. I also wanted to see how Li Jian would fare in this life under his parents' care. As expected, that very night, a sudden burst of a baby's loud crying came from next door, and Wenli hurriedly ran over to knock on my door. The sound of banging on the door woke my sleeping son, startling him into a loud cry. I opened the door with displeasure. Wenli stood at the doorway in a silk nightgown, her face showing a hint of impatience as she said, my son is injured, and Li Chi isn't home. Can you drive me to the hospital? She watched my expression closely, as if hoping to see a look of concern on my face, but I remained expressionless from start to finish. And she was extremely disappointed. I said calmly, all right. Go and bring the child out. She went home to bring Li Jian out, and only then did I realize that his right calf was somehow broken, with the bone piercing through the flesh, and a lot of blood had been lost. Although I hated this child, faced with such a tragic scene, I couldn't help but feel a bit of lingering fear. Without a second thought, I grabbed the car keys and drove her and her son to the hospital. Along the way, Li Jian kept crying loudly, and I impatiently turned up the volume of the car stereo. After arriving at the hospital, Li Jian was taken to the emergency room. Shortly after, the doctor came out of the emergency room and said that Li Jian had lost too much blood and urgently needed a transfusion, but the hospital didn't have enough type A blood. He asked me who could donate blood. Wenli quickly shook her head. No, I'm his mother. Direct blood relatives can't donate blood. I also shook my head. I have type B blood. Type B blood. Shinji, aren't you type A? Wenli suddenly looked at me with a face full of fear. I said seriously, you remembered wrong. Have you forgotten that before Li Chi and I divorced, the whole family had a physical checkup, and you said that Li Jian and I were both 2B? Wenli suddenly remembered the day she and Li Chi had laughed at me. How could Li Jian be type A blood? Isn't he you and Li Chi? Wenli murmured. What did you say? I pretended not to hear. Wenli quickly shut her mouth. I didn't say anything. The doctor's memory was failing, but fortunately, a man nearby happened to have type A blood and donated 200 cubic centimeters. And several medical staff members donated another 1,000 cubic centimeters, which was just enough. Wenli paced back and forth at the entrance of the emergency room, looking worried about the child, but I knew she was starting to have doubts. Before long, she couldn't hold back any longer and ran to the stairwell to call Li Chi. Honey, did you really swap my child with Shinji's that day? Of course, I changed it myself. How could it be fake? What's wrong? Did Shinji find out that we switched the babies? Just now the doctor said the little bastard is type A blood. But both you and Shinji are type B, only I am type A. Suddenly, Wenli shuddered. That child couldn't be ours, could it? What? Impossible, impossible. I changed the baby myself. Shinji couldn't possibly have found out. Wenli thought for a moment, then suddenly realized, could that child be the result of Shinji having an affair with someone else? Li Chi remembered that when I was just pregnant, I happened to be working overtime with a male colleague from the company. And he immediately believed this nonsense. That bitch, how dare she cheat on me? I won't let either of them get away with it. Wenli quickly tried to calm him down. Don't act impulsively. Once our son gets his hands on the Shin family's fortune, it won't be too late to deal with the two of them. Seeing that Wenli had hung up the phone, I hurried back to the entrance of the emergency room. Not long after, Wenli returned gracefully, her gaze towards me still filled with disdain and resentment. I could only feel speechless. It was just Li Jian's bad luck. The blood type issue was actually smoothed over by them just like that. Li Jian stayed in the hospital for a week before returning home. On the day he came back, the heart-wrenching cries of a baby could be heard from the neighboring house. I opened the door and took a look. Their door was wide open, probably to make sure I could see and hear my son being tormented. But they had no idea that it wasn't my son, it was their own. I saw blisters all over the child's face and arms, and steam rising from the floor. Seeing me open the door, Li Qi looked at me with a forced smile and said, I accidentally lost my grip on the cup and spilled boiling water on him. After learning that Li Jian was an illegitimate child, he wanted to take revenge on both me and Li Jian. Unfortunately, since I divorced him, he didn't dare to lay a hand on me casually. And Li Jian was staying in the hospital, so he couldn't possibly hit the child there either. Now that Li Jian has returned, he naturally wants to vent his anger properly. This man is truly terrifying. I shuddered, but this is no longer my concern. If I hadn't been reborn, it would have been my son who suffered this treatment. In my previous life, this didn't happen. I guess it's because I confronted them. So they hate me and my child even more. At my son's full moon banquet, Li Qi and Wanli showed up uninvited. When they found out I named my child Xinyu, Li Qi pulled me aside into a corner. Xinji, that's my son. He can only take my surname. Li, come with me now to change his name. I only said one thing to him. Oh, how about giving you custody then? He immediately fell silent and walked away in a huff. First, because he didn't have time to take care of the child, and Wang Li was just a good-looking rural woman. The child might not turn out as excellent as I could teach them if they stayed with them. Second, he was afraid that if I lost custody, I might remarry and have more children, and then Xinyu wouldn't be able to take all the property. Li Qi returned to the banquet in a disgruntled manner and gave Wanli a meaningful glance. Wanli quickly stepped forward. She had fair and beautiful skin, a slender figure, and was wearing a light blue cheongsam, with only a simple silver hairpin in her hair. She smiled and gave her son an imperial green amulet. How can I accept such an expensive gift? You and Li Qi aren't doing well right now. I pretended to refuse. Wang Li smiled gently and said, please don't say that. Although I may not come from as good a family as yours, I still know that your son deserves the very best. Look at what your relatives and friends have given. My gift is nothing in comparison. Indeed, as a woman of the Shin family, everyone at this banquet is wealthy. It's either giving away houses or cars, and there's even a grandfather giving away shares. An imperial green amulet is really nothing. I asked her, where's your son? Aren't you holding a full month celebration? My sister-in-law said indifferently, he brought bad luck to his father, and we're still going to hold a full month celebration for him. I'm already being kind enough by being willing to give birth to him. But that child is clearly Li Qi's. And Li Qi's brother was also killed by him and Wanli in a conspiracy. 5. Li Qi's brother worked overtime until 11 p.m. and came home, but Wanli insisted on wanting to eat a small cake. His brother said he would buy it tomorrow, but Wanli said it wasn't her who wanted it, it was their son who wanted it. His brother, unable to handle the commotion, drove a car with tampered brake lines to buy it for her. As a result, he crashed into a river on the way and drowned. Li Qi and Wanli, after delivering the gifts, hugged and kissed their son affectionately for a while, only handing the child back to me when their arms grew tired. Your son is really handsome. I wish I could have such a good-looking son. Her words won praise from everyone around. After entertaining the guests for a while, I felt a bit tired, so I took the child home first, leaving the rest to my parents. My sister-in-law followed me out, carrying a frail baby boy in her arms. The child was thin, with sparse hair, looking weak and as if a gust of wind could knock him over. Li Qi's company is in trouble. Are you heading home now? Could you give me a ride? I quickly replied, is this your child? Why is he so thin? Don't stand in the wind, get in the car, and I'll take you home. In my past life, Li Qi's company had its scandal exposed today. Their product was accused of plagiarism. Li Qi hurriedly called me away from the full moon banquet to ask my parents for help, while he himself stayed at the hotel with Wanli to entertain the guests. The reason Wanli and Li Qi have been so frugal lately is because they've poured all their money into the project. Hearing my words, Wanli smiled and said, this is my son, a lowly one, but I can't just not raise him, can I? Every day, Li Qi and Wanli would call Li Jian little lowlife and little wretch. Aunt Zhang once passed by and couldn't stand it, so she said a few words to them. They only intensified their behavior, thinking that Aunt Zhang would definitely tell me about such matters. Of course, they knew I wouldn't feel sorry for the child, but when the truth came to light one day, every day of these years would be like a knife stabbing into me. I lowered my head, gently patting Xinyu in my arms, feeling a deep sorrow in my heart. So Li Qi hated me this much. It's a pity that the one he ruined wasn't my son, but the child he had with his sister-in-law. As she spoke, her smile still carried a naive charm. Her slender, pale fingers brushed over the child's pockmarked face, but perhaps the movement was too rough and hurt him, for he began to cry. Yet his cries were as faint as a cat's meow, barely audible. After a few weak struggles, he fell silent. I didn't speak. She chuckled softly again. Don't think I'm being too harsh. This child is cursed, bringing misfortune to all his kin. He caused his father's death even before he was born. And as soon as he came into the world, he made me hemorrhage so badly that I had to have my uterus removed. I don't dare to get close to him, but I can't just throw him away either. I can only raise him like a little cat or dog." And Zhang hugged Xinyu indignantly and said, "What nonsense about being a jinx, that's all baseless talk. How can you, a woman of the new era, believe in such things?" Wang Li ignored her and only paid attention to me. I focused on driving. Seeing that I wasn't responding, she poked Li Jian forcefully again. He didn't stop until he burst into loud sobs. As I got out of the car, I heard her mutter, "What mother-son connection, it's all fake." In the evening, Li Qi returned, looking utterly dejected. Soon, cries and commotion came from their side. I managed to eat 2 bowls of rice right through their noise. Finally, the neighbors downstairs couldn't stand it anymore and came up to tell them to stop disturbing the peace. Li Qi and Wan Li sold all their family's RV, jewelry, and valuables to pay off their debts, and could only afford to rent a house in the community. 6. But Wan Li often came to my house to sit and chat. I was happy to see her being good to my son, so I welcomed her visits. Gradually, Xinyu and Li Jian grew up. Xinyu started learning to read at the age of 3 and was sent directly to the kindergarten under our name at 4. I asked Wan Li if she wanted to get her son in there as well. She quickly waved her hand in refusal, saying the tuition there was too expensive and they couldn't afford it. I knew she definitely wouldn't be willing to spend that much money to let my son study in such a good place, otherwise I wouldn't have brought it up. After she refused, I didn't say anything more. Later, I found out that it wasn't until she was 5 years old that she sent Li Jian, who was as thin as a kitten, with sparse hair, a ruined left face, and covered in scars, to an unlicensed kindergarten next to the neighborhood. Wan Li, however, looked resolute. As long as the child is smart, they can succeed anywhere. Look at Li Qi, he didn't even get to attend kindergarten back then, and isn't he doing just fine now? I clicked my tongue. Goodness, Li Qi is almost bankrupt. He's been begging left and right to secure projects outside, thinking I don't know. But people who are aware of our relationship have already told me everything, and besides, did I come back from Rebirth just to get revenge on them? I started my own company and, leveraging the information gap from my previous life, I have no idea how many projects I snatched from Li Qi. I established this company less than 2 or 3 years ago. With our family's connections and my insider knowledge, the company has now reached a market value of 1.5 billion. Moreover, Li Jian is simply not cut out for studying. In my previous life, if I hadn't been strict and applied constant pressure, there's no way Li Qi would have made it through 9 years of compulsory education and gotten into high school. That day, I happened to leave work early to pick up a child from kindergarten. On my way back, I ran into Wan Li hitting Li Jian in the neighborhood. "Aren't you just asking for it? Why did you hit their child?" Wan Li slapped Li Jian across the face. Li Jian's frail body, which seemed as if it would topple with a gust of wind, was knocked to the ground by her. He cried. He called me a monster first. "Mom, please don't hit me." Watching his trembling, fearful state, I felt a twinge of pity, though it was merely the most basic human sympathy. Yet, I couldn't bring myself to speak a single word in his defense, because he deserved what he was getting. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that Li Qi and Wan Li treated Li Jian poorly. Many even pitied him, speaking up for him and giving him food. As a result, after Li Jian finished eating, he pretended to have a stomachache to extort money. He also secretly threw trash into the homes of those who spoke up for him, simply because he was jealous of their children. Now, even though he is being beaten again, not a single person in the neighborhood steps forward to say a word in his defense. Wan Li roared, "Aren't you a monster? Look at your own face, and you're afraid of others talking about it. Now it's come to this, they're demanding compensation from me." Just thinking about the money that family asked her for made her tremble with pain. After all, they were truly on the verge of not being able to afford meat anymore. Wan Li started punching and kicking Li Jian. "It's all your fault. It's all your fault, you jinx, you monster." Meanwhile, Li Qi, looking utterly exhausted, returned from work. He had no intention of intervening. After just a glance, he went straight home. Wan Li made a scene, and the child was beaten until his head was bleeding. Seeing the child crying and screaming, many people showed pity on their faces but dared not say anything. Later, someone couldn't bear to watch any longer and secretly called the police. Li Qi ordered Li Jian to beg the police not to take his mother away. Li Jian dared not disobey Li Qi's orders, nor did he dare to let Wan Li be detained. 7. He clung to the police officer's leg, crying and making a fuss, throwing a tantrum to prevent them from taking Wan Li away. The police were helpless, and since it was her own child she was hitting, they could only offer a few words of advice before leaving. Seeing me, a flicker of triumph flashed in Wan Li's eyes. "What, doesn't she feel sorry for him? You better not feel sorry for him. He's just a worthless brat, not deserving of anyone's pity. After saying that, she grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and was about to press it onto Li Jian's wound. I'll stop the bleeding for him. I stood still, and Li Qi also said, my wife knows how to take care of the child herself. Don't meddle in other people's business. The most important thing for you right now is to take care of our son. Li Jian cried out in pain. But Wang Li remained unmoved, still dissatisfied. She pouted and threw the child to the ground, her eyes filled with pride. What, Xinji, do you think this child is pitiful? Does your heart ache? Not really, but I'm really starting to doubt the saying that mother and child are connected, because neither Wang Li nor Li Qi seemed to have chest pain. I didn't say anything. She then left with Li Qi, and Li Jian obediently followed behind them, but when Li Jian got up from the ground, I saw the deep-seated hatred in his eyes. Thinking back to my previous life, when I forbade him from playing games and eating junk food, he wanted to kill me. I wonder what fate awaits Li Qi and Wang Li in this life. However, my son has been raised well by me, with the experience from my previous life. Although I don't like letting him eat junk food, I still take him out to try it occasionally. Xinyu's stomach and intestines are as delicate as Li Jian's in his previous life. And on the day he wanted to eat junk food, he had diarrhea that night. Fortunately, I didn't let him eat too much, and he got better after taking medicine. After that, he never ate junk food again. I am willing to let him try to stumble and get hurt, but I will always be there to support him, instead of coddling the child like in the previous life, treating them as if they were held in the palm of the hand and kept in the mouth. Xinyu was clever, had good self-control, and performed exceptionally well academically all the way. He also fell in love with the piano, and by the time he entered middle school, he had already passed the 5th level of piano exams. Wang Li and Li Qi were extremely satisfied, often bringing gifts for my son. Even if they couldn't afford to eat well or dress properly, they would squeeze up money to buy him an iPhone and a MacBook. Fortunately, my son was very sensible and didn't become addicted, so I didn't take them away. And because of the burns on his face and his inherent personality, Li Jian appeared timid and hesitant, walking close to the wall with his head down, but in reality, he harbors a dark and twisted nature. I once saw him torturing and killing stray cats behind the neighborhood. When he saw me, his eyes were filled with jealousy and hatred, because his mother and Li Qi would either beat or scold him. While they treated my son exceptionally well, I was afraid he might harm my son. So I simply moved to another house, which is also closer to my son's school. Wang Li and Li Qi are coming to see me, and I explicitly told them not to tell Li Jian where we live, because I'm afraid Li Jian might be jealous of how well they treat my son and might harm him. They eagerly agreed, because they still think this is their son and share the same concerns as I do. Why do this? Because I also want them to experience the feelings I had in my previous life. The better they treat my son now, the more regret they will feel when they learn the truth. The worse they treat Li Jian now, the more pain they will feel later on. 8. At 15, my son Xinyu entered the best class at the city's top high school. Li Qi and Wang Li sent over expensive gifts once again. After they reluctantly left, Xinyu asked me, what's really going on with my dad and Aunt Wang? Why are they so good to me but treat their own son so poorly? He didn't like Li Qi and Wang Li, but he maintained the most basic respect for them. Even if Li Qi and Wang Li wanted to take him to the amusement park or treat him to KFC, he remained unmoved. On one hand, he despised their abusive behavior toward children, and on the other hand, Xinyu had long since learned to travel abroad with his bodyguards. I never missed any of the school-organized study trips to Switzerland or the United States. In my previous life, my son suffered too much, so in this life, as long as it doesn't affect his studies at this stage, I will compensate him doubly, take him to see the world and experience life. Not letting it affect his studies is also for his future, so that he can support his own world and be capable of managing the property under my name. His horizons have long surpassed what amusement parks and KFC can satisfy. After some thought, I told Xinyu everything about my previous life exactly as it happened. I was worried that Xinyu wouldn't believe me, but I never expected him to believe such an outrageous story. He hugged me and cried, Mom, I will always love you. I was relieved and told him not to be corrupted by Wang Li and Li Qi's sugar-coated bullets. He waved his fist and said, they caused your death. How could I possibly believe their sugar-coated bullets? They never mentioned that he also died because of them, and Li Jian's grades were too poor. He didn't get into high school and was sent by them to a sweatshop. Finding a sweatshop in Shanghai is no easy task. They really went to great lengths. I heard he had to work 18-hour days and was given nothing but watery soup to eat. His salary was originally quite substantial, but Wang Li demanded that the boss deposit it into her card. This boss employs child labor, has substandard facilities, and is always pushing the boundaries of the law. That's why he hired quite a few security guards to watch over the factory, unlike Xinyu, who is obedient. Li Jian wanted to escape, but he was dragged back after having his leg broken. The boss only compensated Wanli with 30,000 yuan. Wanli, wearing old clothes, immediately turned around and bought something to give to Xinyu. Xinyu accepted it without hesitation. Li Qi, however, was somewhat dissatisfied, because over the years, under the siege of various major companies, his own company had long since gone bankrupt, and now he could only go to work for other companies. You should at least leave some for us to use ourselves, Wanli said. He's our own flesh and blood. We haven't been able to be by his side all these years, and we already feel guilty about that. What's wrong with spending a little money? Li Qi had nothing more to say. One day, he came running to find me. Shinji, I regret it. I shouldn't have agreed to divorce you back then. I still love you. All these years, you haven't been in a relationship. Isn't that because you've been waiting for me? Let's get back together and give Xiaoyu a complete family. It's quite ironic, after we divorced. He didn't openly marry Wanli, and now the two of them are still living in an ambiguous situation. Someone wanted to set them up with a match, but they refused. However, they just won't get married, and I have no idea what's going on. Wanli had been standing behind him at some point, watching the scene with gritted teeth. When she saw me looking at her, she forced a smile again. Li Qi still wanted to express his feelings to me, but I sidestepped him and said, "Sorry, my boyfriend is here to pick me up." 9. Tall and handsome Zhang Yuan tipped my hand. "Why are you getting off work so late today?" I smiled and said, "There were some things I hadn't finished. I have tomorrow off. So let's take Xiaoyu and Xiaoyuan out to play." Zhang Yuan is also remarried, but his ex-wife passed away from illness. We met in a class group chat. It was quite trendy. We had a bit of an online romance. Li Qi looked at me in disbelief. "You have a boyfriend, Shinji Tao. How could you betray me? That's really disgusting. We've been divorced for over 10 years, and he's still talking about betrayal." I frowned, looking at him with disgust. "Who are you?" I am," he stammered, unable to get the words out. Watching me and Zhang Yuan drive away, that evening, he called me, "Shinji Tao, come back. I still love you. As long as you break up with him, we can go back to how things were before. I don't believe you would fall in love with someone else." I asked him, "What are you barking about? In what way are you better than my boyfriend? How dare you ask me to break up with my boyfriend and be with you?" He flew into a rage and said, "Shinji Tao, don't you regret this?" And then the news came out that he and Wanli were going to get married. Seeing that I still hadn't made a move, he finally gave in and registered his marriage with Wanli, though they didn't hold a wedding banquet. Although everyone had long speculated about their relationship, it was only now that it was finally confirmed. There was a lot of gossip circulating in their neighborhood, and both of them felt too embarrassed to go out much. Zhang Yuan, cooking in the kitchen, asked me, "Do you want to get married?" I thought about it and said, "Neither of us is short of money, and we both have children. Let's just stay together like this, without getting married. All my assets are meant for my son, even though I really like Xiaoyuan too. But after all, she's not my biological daughter. I also don't want to be bound by marriage again." Zhang Yuan expressed agreement. At the age of 18, Xinyu achieved a score of 716, becoming the top scorer in the college entrance examination, surpassing Li Jian's score from his previous life by 14 points. Many reporters and admissions office teachers crowded at the entrance of Xinyu's school to interview him. At that moment, Li Qi and Wanli pushed their way in. Wanli held Xinyu's hand, crying and laughing as she said, you are my son." Xinyu broke free from both of their hands and walked over to my side. Wanli didn't care now. She was trembling with excitement, waiting to see how I would break down in despair. Back then, Shinji Tao and I gave birth in the same hospital and stayed in the same ward. The nurse made a mistake and switched our sons. Her gaze was filled with malice and anticipation as she looked at me. It's not surprising either. A while back, during the bull market, Li Qi took out all his money and even borrowed a lot from loan sharks to invest, only to see it plummet right after he put it in. The loan sharks were chasing him for repayment, and he almost followed them to jump off a building, but then he remembered he had a son who held shares in the Shin family company, and his hope was rekindled. With just a wave of Xinyu's hand, wouldn't this little problem be solved? But I just looked at them without saying a word. Their expressions slowly froze. "Why aren't you heartbroken?" At that moment, the reporter snapped back to reality and quickly asked, "Ma'am, could you elaborate on what you just said?" Wanli paused for a moment before speaking word by word. "Back then, Shinji Tao and I gave birth in the same hospital. The nurse mixed up our two children. Li Jian was diagnosed with lung cancer, and today we went to the hospital for a matching test only to find out that Li Jian is not my biological son. He is Shinji Tao's son." 10. She emphasized the word cancer. Seeing that I still had no expression on my face, she shouted, "Say something. Do you not want your son anymore?" He's your own flesh and blood. Now that he has cancer, you can't just ignore him, can you? You're his biological mother. Even if you haven't raised him, he still carries the blood of your Shin family. I let out a sigh, trembling with emotion as well. I asked them, did you really go for the matching test that early? Wanli seemed a bit guilty, but Li Qi spoke with righteous indignation. Of course, he's my son. How could I not care about him? I said, if you really did the matching test, how come you didn't know they were your biological sons? The reporters gasped in surprise once again and began asking questions one after another. Wanli's expression froze, and she asked me, what do you mean? She said in a panic. The nurse mixed up the babies. That's your son. Shinyu is my son. Ms. Shin, are you now unwilling to acknowledge your son? Ms. Shin, do you have more confidence in Shinyu as your successor? Your own son is in the hospital, and you don't care. This is big news. The top scorer in the National College Entrance Exam, the Shin family of Shanghai, and the true and false Yan masters, every single one is a bombshell. I said again, I knew the nurse mixed up our babies on the day of delivery, so when you went out to get water, I switched back on my own. Under their stunned gazes, I continued, you've been too harsh on Li Jian all these years. He's your own son. You, Wanli, disfigured him with boiling water, beat and cursed him daily. And right after he finished junior high, you both sent him to a sweatshop where the boss broke his leg. Now he even has cancer, so you two abused Li Jian because you thought he was my son. Why are you doing this? How could you bear to do this? I sobbed in Shinyu's arms. Shinyu patted my back to comfort me, saying, Mom, don't be sad. You've been very good to Li Jian, always bringing him food and drinks, and sometimes even giving him money. But it's his misfortune to have such parents, and it's none of your business. Actually, the food and drinks weren't sent by me. It was Aunt Zhang who couldn't bear to see him like that and sent them. I couldn't tell Aunt Zhang about what happened in my past life, so I had to let her do as she pleased. Fortunately, Li Jian's twisted personality later made Aunt Zhang decide to keep her distance from him. Xiao Yu is clever and took the opportunity to give me a positive image, helping our Shin family gain another wave of popularity. The reporters were in an uproar and quickly turned to ask the two of them, so, did you mistreat your son because you thought he was born to Ms. Shin? Were you after the Shin family's wealth? Why do you hate Ms. Shin so much? That statement makes it sound as if I, the victim, am the one at fault. Wanli's expression instantly froze. You, what did you say? I repeated, I know the child was mistaken, so I swapped them back myself. The child has been swapped back by me. Li Jian is your biological son. My sister-in-law stared at me woodenly, then suddenly let out a sharp cry. She lunged at me. Shinji, you bitch. You knew all along that we swapped your children. Why didn't you say anything? Are you pleased to see us mistreating our own son? My son, my son. The bodyguard stopped her, while Li Qi beside her seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant, collapsing to the ground. Impossible, impossible. It shouldn't be like this. How did you know we switched sons? 11. At that moment, a voice came from outside the crowd. Is everything you said true? Shinji Tao, did you switch me and Shinyu back? The crowd parted, and Li Jian limped in from outside. His ferocious and ugly face made the journalist gasp in shock. His eyes were filled with hatred. Why, it wasn't supposed to be like this. In the previous life, you didn't swap us back. Seeing the resentment in his eyes, I finally realized that he had also been reborn. With so many journalists present, many of whom were broadcasting live, I absolutely had to hold back and not laugh. I pinched my thigh until it bruised to feign unbearable pain and said, what are you talking about? What previous life? This life, I saw the mole behind his ear right after I gave birth to Xiaoyu, so I knew the babies had been switched and swapped them back. Shinyu also said, all the suffering you're going through now is caused by your biological parents. What does it have to do with my mom? Have you forgotten how they treated you? You're blaming my mom, but do you really want them to have switched us? It seems you're not a good person either. Li Jian's body trembled uncontrollably. His eyes filled with hatred as he glared at Shinyu. It was terrifying. If the bodyguards hadn't been there to stop him, I'm sure he would have rushed over to kill both me and Shinyu. My son, it's my fault. It's all my fault. Wanli cried out in despair as she held Li Jian tightly. Li Qi, on the other hand, stared at Li Jian's mutilated body in a daze, utterly devastated. Li Jian's fists clenched with a crackling sound. Then he pulled out a fruit knife from under his hospital gown and stabbed it into Wanli's chest. Before anyone could react, he pushed Wanli aside and stabbed Li Qi's stomach repeatedly. Murder. The reporters and admissions office teachers quickly retreated behind the bodyguards. Even the bodyguards were so frightened that they took a step back. Reacting quickly, he stepped forward and kicked the knife out of Li Jian's hand, pinning him to the ground. Li Jian, an 18-year-old, weighed less than 90 pounds and was pinned to the ground by a bodyguard with one hand, unable to move. Before long, the police and an ambulance arrived. The police took Li Jian away, while Wanli and Li Qi were taken into the ambulance. Wanli was stabbed directly in the heart and died instantly, while Li Qi lingered for over 10 minutes in the ambulance, succumbing to excessive blood loss just as they were about to reach the hospital. Li Jian, having committed murder in public and with the incident being live-streamed nationwide, became a national sensation and was directly sentenced to death. There was no need for medical treatment, and he was sent directly to prison. On the day before the execution, I took Shinyu to see Li Jian. Li Jian's hair had fallen out, leaving only a few strands, and combined with his face and his gloomy demeanor, he really looked like a monster. I know you've been reborn, I'm telling you. I've been reborn too, on the day I gave birth. If you hadn't been so heartless in your previous life, you wouldn't be in this situation today. Li Jian cried and made a scene. I'm your son too. In my previous life, you cooked for me with your own hands, told me stories before bed, and helped me with my homework. How could you bear to do this? I sneered mockingly. So you actually know how well I treated you, then why did you want to kill me? You're just a beast. A wild dog that can't be tamed. This is the retribution you deserve. After saying that, I turned and left with Shinyu. Then there came a commotion. Calm down, 09586. Please calm down. I should have been the top scorer in the college entrance exam. I am the only true successor of Shinjitao. Shinyu, you two deserve to die. In the next life, I will definitely kill you. Good. Those who die unrepentant won't get another life, and even if they do, it's only to repay the debts of their previous one. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My sister-in-law broke her hand at home and still hasn't fully recovered after 3 months of sick leave. Her workplace gave her 2 options, either return to work or resign. My parents agreed that she should go back to work. It's her left hand that's broken, so it doesn't affect much. Jobs are hard to come by these days. You're injured, so the company definitely won't assign you heavy work. It's like sitting back and earning money with ease. My brother also supported this idea, only I could see my sister-in-law's reluctance, so in front of the whole family, I advised her to focus on recovering from her injury first. After hearing this, my sister-in-law immediately resigned, but it took a whole year for her to fully recover. When she went to look for a job again, she couldn't find one no matter how hard she tried. Employers either disliked her long gap in employment or were concerned about potential after effects. After being repeatedly rejected, my sister-in-law vented her anger on me. If you hadn't stopped me back then, things wouldn't have turned out like this. My father and brother joined in the scolding. It's all because of your meddling. My mother was in a difficult position, but she still urged me to apologize and endure it. Finally, my sister-in-law shouted, "Since I don't have a job, you won't have one either," as she reached out and pushed me down the stairs. That push didn't break my hands, but it directly took my life. When I woke up again, I had actually returned to the moment when my sister-in-law had to make a choice. Today, our boss said, either go to work tomorrow or leave. At the dinner table, my sister-in-law spoke with a worried expression. Dad chimed in, "Then go ahead." "Exactly," Mom chimed in. "Jobs are so hard to come by these days, and you finally found one, and you haven't even worked a full year yet." Sister-in-law's face turned grim, but the doctor said my hand needs to be properly rested for another 3 months. If it doesn't heal well, there could be complications. You injured your left hand, and that job is just typing in the office. It won't be affected, Dad said with certainty. Husband, Mom, and Dad don't understand. You need to make a decision for me. My brother calmly continued eating the rice in his bowl, and only after finishing did he let out a satisfied burp before putting down his chopsticks. "Wife, of course you should go. If there's any work, just say your hand hasn't fully recovered and push it aside." "Can they really force you to do it? Then you can just sit there comfortably and rest while still getting paid. How great is that?" Mom and Dad nodded repeatedly. That makes perfect sense, but my sister-in-law still furrowed her brow. "I'm just afraid the company will insist on letting me go. If they handle it straightforwardly, that's fine, but if they refuse, they have plenty of ways to pressure me." "Are you stupid? Don't you know how to refuse if something happens? If they try to force you, just call the police." My brother still dismissed it lightly. Dad also put down his bowl and chopsticks. "If anything really happens, don't be afraid. Our whole family will definitely go to your boss to demand an explanation. Maybe we can even get some compensation." Mom took a step back and reminded her, "If you resign now, not only will you get nothing, but what will you eat and drink while staying at home afterward?" Even though my parents and brother joined forces to persuade her, My sister-in-law clearly wasn't happy about it. She wore a sour expression, her eyes sweeping across the dining table. Finally, they settled on me, who had been silent. Shinshin, help me analyze this. Should I really not go to work? Sure enough, here it comes, I sneered inwardly. In my previous life, I could see my sister-in-law's reluctance and couldn't bear to watch her being pressured by my parents and brother to go to work. So I spoke up for her. As a result, my sister-in-law immediately seized the opportunity and went to resign right away, without receiving any compensation. My parents and brother blamed her for being too impulsive. My sister-in-law directly pushed the blame onto me, saying I had encouraged her. My parents forced me to admit my mistake. My brother made me compensate my sister-in-law for her financial losses. I couldn't defend myself. And for the sake of family harmony, I had to endure it all. But even so, when I was eventually killed by my sister-in-law, my family only made sarcastic remarks. In this lifetime, I will never get involved in any matters of this family again. So I shook my head and said, Sister-in-law, I just started working and don't understand anything. You should make the decision yourself. My sister-in-law was taken aback but still didn't give up. She deliberately sat down next to me and tried to persuade me patiently. I just can't make up my mind. If I go, the boss will definitely give me a hard time and force me to resign. By then, I might not only lose my job but also fail to recover my hand properly. So, Shinshin, what do you think, sister-in-law? If you don't want to go, then don't go. Her face lit up with joy. But I immediately cut in loudly. If you want to go, then go. Watching her swallow her words halfway, her entire face flushed bright red, I continued. Mom, Dad, and my brother all suggested going. You're still hesitating. Is it because you don't want to go? In this lifetime, I threw the question back at her. I wanted to see how she would respond. Too, who would have thought my sister-in-law would skip over the question entirely? It's precisely because they've all given their suggestions that I'm asking you. Shinshin, what do you really think? Seeing that she still wanted to treat me like a pushover, I decided to bring everyone else into the conversation. Mom and Dad are right. Don't you think so, sister-in-law? Don't be like that. How about this? Pretend you're me, with a broken hand needing rest, and someone at work is giving you a hard time. What would you choose? Then listen to your brother. He always has your best interests at heart, right? After a few rounds, sister-in-law clearly couldn't hide her emotions anymore. She directly pulled a long face. Resign or what? You must choose one. I really didn't expect that, even after talking to this extent. She would still force me to say the answer she wanted. Fortunately, Dad grew impatient. He interrupted his sister-in-law's pressing questions. Daughter-in-law, we've all said you should go to work, but you keep asking and asking. What exactly do you want? We're all family. If you think something is wrong, just say it straight. Don't make it seem like we're forcing you. Bang. My brother slammed the table even harder. Shinlin. After all that's been said, what's there left to choose? If you just don't want to go to work, say it straight out. No one's got nothing better to do than to harm you. Of course not. My sister-in-law's face stiffened. My matters are the family's matters too. Isn't it only right to let everyone share their opinions? At this point, she added with a grievance, how was I to know that Shinshin wouldn't just keep her thoughts to herself but also stir up trouble? Shinshin, by doing this, do you mean to say you think I shouldn't go to work? With a way out now offered, my father's expression immediately softened, but then he turned to me with a bad temper. If I ask you, just answer. Why bring up so much nonsense? My brother leaned back in his chair, his eyes darting around, and immediately fired off 3 questions in a row. Shinshin, do you think your sister-in-law shouldn't go to work? If she doesn't work, what will she eat? Are you going to support her? This turn of events felt utterly absurd to me, however. What was even more ridiculous was that my sister-in-law immediately stood up and started speaking on her own. Forget it, since Shinshin is willing to take responsibility, I'll listen to her and not go to work. Everyone, please don't blame Shinshin anymore for my sake. Alright then, Shinshin, you'll be responsible for your sister-in-law for 3 months. That's right, this is what family is all about. We should lend a hand when it's needed. Hearing these words, I was almost on the verge of laughing in anger. In my past life, it was indeed my big mouth that caused my sister-in-law to leave her job and stay at home. When my parents and brother pressed me to take responsibility, I had no choice but to accept it. For the next 3 months, my sister-in-law had everything handed to her on a silver platter: food, clothing, and all her daily needs were my responsibility. As someone who had just started working, I was barely making ends meet myself. Yet she lived in absolute comfort, and then, her hand never fully healed. It wasn't until a full year had passed that I simply couldn't afford to support her any longer. Her hand had just healed, and she was planning to go out to look for a job, but after all, she had been out of work for too long, and the reason for the gap was just a common fracture. So no company was willing to hire her. With no money and no job, my sister-in-law turned her anger on me, which ended up costing me my life. But at that time, I thought it was all my sister-in-law's fault, and my parents and brother were only urging me to endure for the sake of family harmony. In this lifetime, even if I keep my mouth shut, they can still pin this mess on me. Or maybe they've already joined forces and are making their plans right in front of me, at this moment. I can't hold back any longer. I stand up abruptly, point at my sister-in-law's nose, and start shouting, "You hurt your hand, not your brain, so why can't you make your own decisions? Even if you want to play both sides and find a scapegoat, go to your parents or your husband. Why should it fall on me, your sister-in-law? As for that lousy job of yours, whether you keep it or not is none of my damn business." After cursing, I strode out of the house, slamming the door with a deafening bang. 3. But before I could reach the elevator, my mom opened the door and pulled me back. "Shinshin, where are you going so late at night? It was you who spoke carelessly and caused misunderstandings. How can you have the nerve to slam the door? Go back and apologize to everyone." My dad shouted from inside the house, "Don't bother with her. She's grown up and thinks she's tough now, disobedient and even talking back. If she's so capable, she should never come back to this house again." Chin-yusin. Your sister-in-law asked you out of respect for you. Who are you giving that attitude to? If you don't clear things up today, I'll act as if I never had a sister. My brother also slammed the table, his face flushed with anger as he yelled. I stiffened my neck and shouted back, "I'm not wrong, still want an apology, dream on. As for not being allowed to come home and not being their daughter or sister anymore, that's exactly what I've been hoping for. I only lived at home when I first started working to save money, but in reality, the monthly living expenses I handed over, along with the money I gave them as a token of respect, added up to more than what I would have spent renting a place outside. By then, every single penny will be saved and spent on myself. Life couldn't be better. Besides, with my sister-in-law in this house, she's always scheming to set traps for others. Over time, I might fall into one of those traps again and risk my life. So no matter how much they threatened or yelled, I just pulled my mom's hand away, frantically pressed the elevator button, and was determined to leave. But suddenly, my sister-in-law burst into loud sobs. "Mom, Dad, husband, please don't blame Shinshin anymore. It's all my fault. If I had understood Shinshin's meaning earlier, I wouldn't have kept asking questions and made her misunderstand." This sudden gesture of reconciliation instantly softened Dad and my brother. Ahem. "Since my daughter-in-law has said so, let's just forget about it. Shinshin, even if it was a misunderstanding, you shouldn't lose your temper after just a few words. What kind of behavior is that?" Mom once again took my hand and earnestly advised, "All right, we're all family. Once the misunderstanding is cleared up, it's fine. Thankfully, your sister-in-law isn't holding a grudge this time. You can't act like this again in the future." After saying that, she tried to pull me back into the house. But I still stood my ground, looking straight at my sister-in-law and asking, "You understand? Then tell me, what exactly do you think I meant?" Her eyes shifted, and then she spoke with an air of sincerity. "Shinshin, don't worry. I know you only have my best interests at heart. I'll definitely follow your advice." I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh at those words. Even at this point, she still wants to use me as a stepping stone. To avoid being tricked again, I emphasized once more. "Whether you go to work or quit your job, it's your own business. It has nothing to do with me." My sister-in-law's face stiffened, but before she could respond, my brother slammed the table and exploded. "Chin-yusin, we've already humbled ourselves this much. Are you still not done? Do you really have to stir up trouble and make this family fall apart before you're satisfied? All right, why are you arguing again?" Mom waved her hand in the middle, then turned to scold me. "You too, as a girl. Can't you say a few less words? We're all family. What are you trying to achieve by being so relentless?" "I don't want to do anything. I just don't want to take the blame. I just want to leave." But Mom just wouldn't let go. Dad and my brother started cursing again, and my sister-in-law was adding fuel to the fire on the side. For a moment, the entire hallway was in an uproar. Click. Just at that moment, the neighbor's door opened. The neighbor next door poked his head out and shouted, "Old Chin, what's going on at your place?" His wife followed behind, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "What's all the fuss about so late at night?" My parents and brother, concerned about their reputation, fell silent. My sister-in-law also lowered her head. Only I seized the opportunity to shout, "Mom, Dad, whether sister-in-law goes to work or not is up to you. I don't understand, so I won't give any advice. I have to work overtime at the company, so I'm leaving first. No need to see me off. Making such a big fuss just to see someone off. I thought it was a fight," the old man muttered. The old lady, however, only focused on the first part and hurriedly leaned in to ask, "Why is she not going to work at such a young age?" Back in our day, just then, the elevator finally arrived. While Mom was distracted, I immediately broke free from her grip and ran into the elevator. As the door closed, My sister-in-law's sinister gaze fixed directly on me. 4. I took a taxi back to the company overnight and booked a room at a nearby hotel. Just as I settled in, Mom's call came through. Shin, it's so late. Why aren't you home yet? Before I could answer, Dad shouted hoarsely from the side. Why come back? She needs to suffer a bit outside to learn her lesson, otherwise she'll keep causing trouble like she did today. Mom chimed in with a complaint. Shin, you really went too far today, making our whole family a laughingstock. I listened patiently without saying a word. After all, they didn't need my response anyway. Sure enough, Mom continued on her own, even bringing up my sister-in-law. And why do you have to tell everything to outsiders? That gossipy neighbor next door just left after prying into your sister-in-law's business for ages. Isn't my sister-in-law the one who keeps going back and forth, unable to make up her mind? Isn't it better to have more people give her advice? Has she made up her mind now? Is she going to work tomorrow or not? I finally spoke up coolly. Of course she is. Honestly, what's there to think about? Mom went on and on about my sister-in-law in detail, and Dad chimed in from time to time with a few criticisms. Overall, it's pretty much as I thought. Because of the neighbors' gossip, as well as the suggestions from her parents and brother, my sister-in-law finally announced in front of everyone that she was going to go to work. However, she was worried that the boss might try to cause trouble, so she wanted my brother to go with her. After saying all this, my mother turned back to the original topic. All right, everything's settled now. Come back soon. Apologize to your brother and sister-in-law first thing tomorrow morning. We're all family, so let's be a bit more understanding of each other. Work has been busy lately. I won't be coming back these few days. I still used the same excuse. Dad cursed a few words on the other end of the phone, but it was too muffled to make out clearly. After confirming that I had found a place to stay, Mom sighed and said, "Forget it. It's good to be out for a few days. You have to get used to it eventually. After all, you'll be getting married sooner or later." Sigh. After hanging up the phone, I lay on the unfamiliar bed and took a deep breath. Parents' care is genuine, but there are always too many people and too many things that come before me. In the future, there will only be more. However, it's no big deal. Home has never been a place for fairness. My parents had a hard time raising me, so after I started working, they said it was time for me to repay them. My brother will be the one to support our parents in their old age, and he's also my support for my family, so he says I should respect him. Although my sister-in-law came into the family later, she is the real mistress of the house, so she says I should give way to her. As I grew up, I realized that there was actually no place for me in this family anymore. It's me. I've always been too demanding. The less I have, the more I want to deceive myself into thinking I do, in the end. In my previous life, I endured until the very last moment, gained nothing, and even lost my life. Now, having been reborn into a new life, caring about these superficial things is utterly meaningless. Time and money are only worth spending on oneself. As for that family, since they think I'll leave sooner or later anyway, it's better to start now, and to go far, far away. With that thought, I rolled over and sat up, opened the social media app, found my university mentor's profile picture, and typed word by word in the chat box, "Professor, I'll take that project you mentioned." 5. Have you thought it through? The professor called immediately. This project requires at least half a year abroad, and if there are results, it could take even longer. Have you made up your mind? I confirmed. The teacher's voice suddenly rose with excitement. Great, you've finally come around. Back in school, I asked you to stay and help me, and I've called you several times since. But you insisted on going home. Well, let's not dwell on the past. When can you come at the earliest? I didn't expect the teacher to bring up old grievances right to my face, but back then, I truly had my heart set on going home. So now, feeling a bit guilty, 1 month. There was a brief silence on the other end of the phone before the person spoke. That's a bit long. Are you sure you won't change your mind? Of course. I'll resign right away, once I finish handing things over here. I'll come find you immediately. All right, then 1 month at most. Send me your documents in advance. I'll take care of the visa and flight tickets. Feeling the teacher's high regard and urgency, I could only agree repeatedly. After hanging up the phone, I let out a long sigh of relief. A month is a short time, and there are many things to prepare. The unit's approval for resignation came quickly, but recruiting a replacement and handing over duties indeed require time. I can only follow the routine and stand my last watch, but just when everything was going smoothly, the family members I had deliberately forgotten about reappeared. My mother called and insisted that I go back. It had only been a little over a week, but her voice was filled with exhaustion, and some faint, chaotic noises came through from her side. It's all because of, making a fuss, you yourself. There were the voices of my brother, sister-in-law, and the neighbor aunt. Although I only heard a few words, it was clearly very lively. This is clearly another incident. I don't want to get involved, but unfortunately, I left in a hurry last time, and many of my documents are still at home, so I simply agreed to go back home over the weekend, and so, the day off arrived quickly. I didn't want to stay at home for long, so I deliberately went back very late. But as soon as I entered the door, I was startled. Everyone was there, my parents, my brother and sister-in-law. And even the elderly neighbors, they were all sitting in the living room, staring at me, but as soon as Dad opened his mouth, his tone was still harsh. "Why are you so late? Do we have to invite you to come home now?" Mom glanced at the neighbor, whose ears were perked up, and smoothed things over. Shinshin already said she's busy with work. It's normal for her to be late. Oh, the neighbor aunt chimed in, "You're already so busy just starting work. It seems your boss really values you. How much do you make a month? Have you gotten a raise, been promoted? Are there any nice young men at your workplace?" Just as I was getting dizzy from this barrage of questions, suddenly there was a loud crack. My sister-in-law had forcefully knocked a water cup to the floor. Under everyone's gaze, she said expressionlessly, "My hand has no strength, I can't hold it steady." But I clearly noticed that she wasn't using her previously fractured left hand, but her right hand, however. After being stopped by the old man's look, the neighbor aunt reluctantly closed her mouth. Surprisingly, neither Dad nor my brother said a word. Mom even bent down to pick up the cup, smiling cautiously. "It's fine, I'll just go wash it." But before she could stand up, my sister-in-law sneered, "All right, everyone's here now, so let's get down to business." 6. Mom sat back down awkwardly, but for a good while, no one spoke up first. I was even more bewildered. It's only been 2 weeks since I last came home, and the person in charge has already changed. Has my sister-in-law shifted from guiding behind the scenes to taking the lead openly? And indeed, that's exactly what happened next. My sister-in-law spoke with a sarcastic tone. "If no one's going to say it, then I will. If it weren't for all of you forcing me to go back to work before my hand was even fully healed, I wouldn't have ended up like this today, so, you all have to compensate me." The neighbor immediately retorted, "That day we were just chatting casually. Whether you went or not was your own decision. How can you blame us now?" "Shaoshan, let me speak a few words of fairness." The old man also looked displeased. "Originally, Old Chin and his wife said you were in trouble. And as neighbors, we all came together to discuss it. That's why we're here. Who would have thought you'd be so blunt as soon as you opened your mouth? If that's the case, we won't get involved either. You can sort out your own family matters yourselves." With that, the uncle stood up and even pulled the aunt along. The older brother quickly stepped aside to stop them. "Uncle, aunt, although my wife speaks bluntly, she has a point. That day, it was the two of you who kept talking and talking, forcing her to change her mind. So, for things to turn out like this today, you really have to take responsibility." "Exactly, that's the point. That's why I called you here to explain clearly." Dad nodded in agreement. As soon as they opened their mouths, it was as if they forgot that the person my sister-in-law had accused earlier also included them, and instead, they shifted all the blame onto the neighbors. Mom didn't say a word. My sister-in-law didn't argue either. She pointed at the aunt and spoke even louder, her eyes filled with hatred. "I wasn't even planning to go to work anymore. It's just that you kept nagging, and you took advantage of your seniority, insisting I agree before you'd let go. Why didn't you say back then that we shouldn't meddle in other people's business? Now that there's a problem from getting involved, you want to wash your hands of the responsibility. Dream on." The auntie pushed her brother's hand away and retorted, "What's wrong with saying a few words? It was your husband who personally sent him to class, so blame him." Later, his left hand got injured again, his right hand was sprained, he lost his job. "Go ask your boss for compensation." "Huh," the neighbor uncle sneered. "Old lady, you forgot that her injury happened at home, so she can't pin it on the company. Originally, her boss would rather pay extra compensation just to fire her. Most people would have taken the offer and left it at that. It's the Chin family being greedy and biting off more than they can chew, causing such a fuss that the company had no choice but to follow the laws and regulations. And what's the result? Originally, they were supposed to get 3 months extra pay, but now they only get 1 month. The Chin family is just resentful, so they're picking on us as an easy target to make up for their losses." At this point, the elderly neighbor looked at Dad and said, "Old Chin, if you really think that way, then don't blame me for turning hostile. We've been neighbors for decades, but I'll go out right now and let everyone judge. Let the outsider see which family is truly shameless." Dad's expression stiffened, and he didn't respond. Sister-in-law also stopped being aggressive, and the situation quickly became deadlocked. It was only when I heard this that I finally understood what was going on. I never expected that the unfolding of this life would be so full of twists and turns. For a moment, I couldn't help but take a sharp breath, but with just that little bit of movement, they all turned to look at me. 7. Chin-Yusen, my sister-in-law suddenly brightened up and then shouted at me, "You're the one who should be held responsible. If it weren't for your big mouth, none of this would have happened." This scene was exactly the same as in my previous life, and I couldn't help but feel a chill in my heart. In an instant, I deeply regretted why I had listened to them argue for so long. I should have just packed up and left right from the start, but now, before I could even move, my brother yanked me into the center, shouting, "That's right, it's all your fault, and you have to take full responsibility." Then, the neighbor's grandpa suddenly clapped his hands, his face lighting up with realization. That's it, everything was fine that day until Shinshin saw us and shouted about her sister-in-law. The neighbor's aunt clicked her tongue twice. "No wonder we haven't seen you since then. You were hiding out of guilt after stirring up trouble. How could that be?" Mom laughed awkwardly twice. Shinshin was just in a hurry to get back to the company at the time, so she said it without thinking. I never expected Mom to stand by my side at this moment, and amidst this series of absurdities, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of emotion. But the next moment, the auntie glanced sideways at Mom and said sarcastically, "If it wasn't Shinshin, then who could it be? Your daughter-in-law's company can't be blamed. It's not our fault as a couple, and it's not yours or old Chen's mistake. Could it possibly be your son's fault? Of course it can't be me," my brother immediately retorted loudly. "How could I possibly pressure my own wife over such a small amount of money? If word got out, what would become of the Chen family's reputation? It's indeed Shinshin's fault," Dad slowly began. "She's young and doesn't understand things. She had a few arguments with her sister-in-law at home and ended up causing all this trouble. We didn't manage it well, and we've embarrassed ourselves in front of you." The neighbor auntie gave a half smile. "As long as it's clear, then you can discuss how to take responsibility among yourselves. We were called over after all, so we'll just listen from the side." After saying this, she sat down firmly and even pressed down on the uncle beside her, who was about to stand up again. Mom's face was full of conflict, but she only opened her mouth and closed it again without saying anything. My heart gradually sank. This touch of emotion was ultimately unnecessary. Even in such circumstances, it was clear that my parents chose to protect my brother and sister-in-law, and, of course, themselves. "Shinshin, we've raised you all these years, and you should be sensible by now. With so many things happening at home, we have to give your sister-in-law and the others an explanation." Dad looked at me deeply. Mom quickly chimed in, "Shinshin, we're all family. Your sister-in-law just went through a tough time, so you should be more understanding. Just lower your head a bit, and this will all blow over." I replied with deep disappointment. "So what? How am I supposed to explain myself? How am I supposed to lower my head? I don't ask for much. Just like your brother said before, take care of me until my hand injury heals." My sister-in-law smoothly and naturally took over the conversation. "How long will that be? Maybe 3 months, maybe half a year, or even a year. We'll talk about it once I'm fully recovered." The familiar intention made me chuckle involuntarily, and I shook my head. "I don't agree. What gives you the right to disagree?" My brother immediately glared at me and slammed the table in protest. He always seems to lose his temper so easily when it comes to me. Not a single hint of someone I could rely on in the future. Looking at this circle of family, I couldn't help but laugh again, but as I laughed, tears started to fall. Of course, it's because I have evidence. 8. Ignoring their shocked expressions, I took out my phone, found the recording from 2 weeks ago, and started playing it. When it came to the part where I scolded my sister-in-law for playing both sides, she couldn't hold back anymore. "Chin-Yusen, everyone says you started this. What does showing this prove? Do you think this will get you out of taking responsibility? Turn it off," Dad snapped. "Isn't it embarrassing enough? If you're told to take responsibility, then take it. Why drag in other things? The older you get, the more disobedient you become." My brother, on the other hand, clenched his fist and walked straight over. He snatched the phone, deleted the video, threw it on the ground, and then spat at me. "Don't push your luck." Mom looked around, her face filled with distress, but in the end, she could only scold and persuade me, saying, "Why are you so hot-tempered now? If you had just taken a step back, the family would still be fine. Now look at this mess." Sigh, "Hurry up and apologize to everyone." I shook my head, scanning each of these people one by one, and asked mockingly, "Why should I?" "Because you still have to come back to this home and rely on us," Dad emphasized. "All right." I nodded repeatedly. They couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, but the next moment, I wiped the tears from my face and spoke heavily. "I won't be coming back to this home anymore from now on. As for you all, I can't rely on you either. Deleting the video is useless. There's still a copy in the cloud. Not just the previous ones, but also the ones you argued about in the hallway, even today's, all of them. If you don't want to reason, there's always a place to reason, Dad said angrily. If you insist on making a scene, then I'll just act as if I never had a daughter. In the past, hearing such words might have made me panic, but now I just feel completely indifferent, even a hint of disdain. You clearly favor sons over daughters. And whenever something happens, you either smooth things over or make me take the blame, yet you speak so righteously. What kind of father are you? Shinshin, Mom was shocked. How can you talk to your father like that? Apologize now. She looked anxious, repeatedly giving me meaningful glances. This time, I neither backed down nor stayed silent. Mom, besides telling me to apologize, what else can you say? I'm your biological child too. Have you ever truly considered me? Why should I always be the one to give in? Do I have to keep backing down until I die? Mom looked dazed, murmuring, but I did it all for your own good. You'll have to rely on your dad and your brother in the future. Her appearance was undeniably pitiful, but I just felt exhausted. Mom, I can't rely on anyone. I can only rely on myself. You too, all these years, you've done all the housework and had to earn money outside. Who have you ever been able to rely on? Hearing this, Mom took a few steps back, confusion flashing in her eyes. This time, her lips trembled, but she no longer said anything about making me apologize. You've got some nerve, daring to talk back to Mom and Dad, after all they've done raising you. Is this how you repay them? And you think you can just walk away? Dream on. My brother actually had the gall to speak up, but it's just as well he did. I pointed at him and yelled, "You selfish, good-for-nothing leech, only tough at home. When your wife gets into trouble, you turn around and try to screw over your own family. You have no skills, yet you dare to act all high and mighty in front of me. How could someone like you possibly take care of our parents or be any kind of support to me? Pa, even a stray dog on the street is more useful than you." After tearing into him, I didn't spare my sister-in-law either. If you can't take care of yourself, then go stay in a mental hospital. If you're looking for someone to support you, you were born in the wrong era and married the wrong man, and you've tried to screw me over not once, but twice, with that kind of scheming mind. If you put it to work, there's nothing you couldn't achieve. After scolding everyone, I looked at the neighbor huddled by the door. The neighbor aunt immediately cried out, "Shinshin, I was just misled earlier and never meant to harm you." The old man stood up directly. "Oldshin, you're really not being fair. You're biased and misled us. What a waste of all these years as neighbors. Fine, sort out your own family matters yourselves. We outsiders won't get involved anymore." After saying that, he grabbed the aunt and quickly walked out. This time, no one stopped me. I just snorted coldly, turned around, and went back to my room to pack my things. I had lived in this house for a full 23 years, but when it was time to leave, there was surprisingly little I wanted to take with me, apart from my documents. There were only a few sets of clothes to change into. It only took about 10 minutes to get everything packed up. Opening the bedroom door, only Mom was left in the living room. She looked at me, her eyes red and swollen. "How did things get to this point?" Shinshin, "Just given a little. We're family." Although I didn't expect a few words to change Mom's mind, hearing her say that still made me feel a bit sad. So I just pulled my suitcase and walked out. "Where are you going so late at night?" Mom followed closely behind, pressing for an answer. "The company still needs me to work overtime." "Oh, then go ahead. With things in such a mess, it might be better for you to be away from home for a while." Shinshin, "Think it over carefully, and apologize to everyone when you come back," she kept muttering behind me. Even at the moment the elevator doors were about to close, she hadn't given up trying to persuade me. I didn't respond again, nor did I mention anything about going abroad. The next 2 weeks passed quickly. The company has hired new staff, and I'm in the process of handing over my work. The teacher checks in every now and then, worried that I might change my mind again. Mom also calls from time to time. However, the number of times she asks me to go back and apologize is decreasing. Gradually, she only talked about the changes in each family member. She said that Dad's attitude had softened, and although he didn't say it out loud, he was still thinking of me. She said that my brother no longer pressed me for compensation but instead started focusing on his work and would occasionally lend a hand at home. She said that my sister-in-law was resting at home to recover her hand, which would only take a few months and wouldn't cost much. Moreover, during this time, my sister-in-law was studying and preparing for certifications, which would make it easier for her to find a job in the future. She said, I never said much. Just listened to my mom's endless chatter on the phone. It went on until the day I went abroad. Shinshin, why is it so noisy over there? The airport announcement is urging passengers to board the plane. I decided to say goodbye to her. Mom, I'm going abroad for work. Are you not coming back? I stayed silent. I might return to the country, but perhaps I won't go back to that home. A sob came from the other end of the phone. Shinshin, please don't leave. After you left that day, I had a nightmare. I dreamed that you were misunderstood by us, pushed down the stairs by your sister-in-law. You, Shinshin, Mom was wrong. We were all wrong. I'll change. We'll all change. Please come back, okay? My pupils contracted slightly. So this was the reason for the change in my family. So what? It's too late. It doesn't matter anymore. So, I whispered to her, it was just a dream. Shinshin, the plane is about to take off. Mom, goodbye. Shinshin, Mom choked up, her voice filled with reluctance. Take good care of yourself out there. Will do. From now on, I will take good care of myself. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.